In this study, we used CooRnet to map networks of problematic social media actors that shared posts on the Ukraine war. Coordinated link sharing is a type of online manipulation in which a group of individuals or organizations work together to amplify the visibility of certain content on social media platforms. We used CrowdTangle's search function to retrieve posts created by these lists of pages on the Ukraine invasion between the 20th of February 2022 and the 12th of March in the same year. We extracted links from these sets of posts and used CooRnet to detect a new set of coordinated accounts. Through this process, we identified 1,509 coordinated accounts organized in 117 components and 122 clusters. Overall, we noticed two common trends. We observed how, as the war in Ukraine became relevant and newsworthy, known coordinated networks jumped on the bandwagon to exploit the attention devoted to the topic. We thus see clusters formerly devoted to spreading problematic information on COVID starting to deal with the ongoing war. Besides discussing about war, the data points to the emergence of the role which these groups play as a bridge between the populist far left and the far right. This is evident, for example, in Cluster 5, where French groups supporting Le Pen share common content with those supporting far left Mélenchon. A similar pattern emerges within Component 10, composed of Spanish-speaking South American clusters of leftist groups and a US-based conservative pro-Trump cluster. Commonly shared content supports pro-Russian and Putin positions. Additionally, the study points out a religious approach to war, which often conceals a pro-Russian political stance. Many coordinated accounts publish content in which they ask for prayers for Ukraine and criticize the war using religious arguments. Prayers for a ceasefire, along with the pacifist rhetoric conveyed by this site, end up favoring Russia, which would benefit enormously from Western disengagement in the war in Ukraine. This rhetoric emerges prominently in Cluster 9 and Component 10, where these kinds of entities and the religious pacifist narratives are the bridges among different political groups and even countries, for example, Brazilian pro-Bolsonaro and US extremely conservative. In the case of the United States, a religious group is even the node that connects the US cluster with the Mexican one. Using this map and the underlying data, each participant individually explored the map and identified the most interesting case to focus on. Based on this preference, 3 groups of participants emerged, respectively focused on studying a specific cluster or component. One of these specific clusters consists of the informational ecosystem of the French anti-establishment movement on Facebook. The first key insight within this cluster is that the rejection of the current political system seems to unite a variety of actors, from pro-Russian groups to traditional politics and populist protests like the Gilets jaunes. Our second key insight is that each subgroup in the cluster tends to privilege one type of media, be it social, mainstream, or alternative. In a first step, we used CrowdTangle to request all posts made by the 131 groups of the French cluster published in 2022. In total, we got around 1.8 million Facebook posts. We then focused on the shared links in the cluster to build a network of actors in order to categorize the media sources and to classify the content of the stories. Then we mapped the cluster through network analysis. Links between Facebook groups are created whenever 2 groups have shared the same URL. The node size depends on the number of links. Thanks to the modularity metric from Giphy, we have identified 3 main subclusters. The blue nodes on our map are affiliated to pro-Russia groups, such as the group Putin's Great Russia. The green nodes are affiliated to the traditional left wing, like the Voice of the France Insoumise group. Purple nodes from the populist nebula opposing COVID-related sanitary measures such as Stop the Sanitary Dictature or Say No to the Vaccinal Pass. To understand the informational landscape shared by these actors, we decided to manually classify media sources into 3 categories using the domain names. First, social media represents online social platforms such as Twitter, TikTok, and Telegram. These are the purple edges. Second, the mainstream media with the green edges gather traditional outlets from printed press, Le Monde, to TV channels, Télé France 1. Third, the alternative media with the blue edges designates websites that are defining themselves in opposition to the mainstream media, like France Ce Soir or The Exposé. By using this classification in our network graph, we see the populist group shares mostly links to social media. The political group mainly relays mainstream media, and the pro-Russian group links to alternative media. We then use topic modeling in Cortex to identify 3 main topics, which are shown in the images and the word clouds around the network. For each topic, the word cloud has been issued based on the frequency in the whole dataset of the 6 main words per topic. To illustrate what subgroups they are discussing, a representative post on a Facebook group can be seen along with the shared link of the web page associated. Overall, the story shared by the French anti-establishment movement points towards a sweeping rejection of the current political system. Different topics are portrayed by specific types of media, and each type of media corresponds to a specific community. Populism with social media in purple and alternative media, left-wing with mainstream media in blue, and pro-Russian with alternative media in green. A second studied cluster concerns a mixed group of far-left groups in Latin America, in Argentina, Peru and Mexico, and far-right pro-Trump US groups that promote anti-NATO content by coordinated link sharing on Facebook. Together, these form a component that represents 16% of the total network of problematic social media actors. During the course of our analysis, the most unexpected as well as interesting finding was a connection between the far left-wing Latin American clusters and the right-wing and alt-right USA cluster. These groups are united through link-sharing behavior by the Facebook group Bible Prophecy in the News. This group relates to Eastern Lighting, a Chinese religious cult gathering followers with attention-grabbing content and events, enticing people into joining the cult, and also promoting sensational content on the Ukraine war. Our main approach consisted of analyzing 2 periods of time, 10 months before and 10 months after the declaration of war by Putin. Then we made a corpus of texts out of 10,000 posts that had the most interactions for each period, and conducted an analysis of term co-occurrences within this corpus. Finally, we focused on analyzing only Ukraine-related terms. A closer look at the main terms posted in these clusters reveals a shift in the narratives before and after the Ukraine war began. The narratives seem to follow the evolution of popular or newsworthy topics in the global political environment, leveraging them to promote anti-NATO ideologies. Overall, the main objective of these groups seemed to be the construction of and push toward anti-NATO sentiment, before the war by utilizing NATO-critical narratives related to vaccinations, the Cuban embargo and domestic corruptions, but starting from the Ukraine invasion by pushing pro-Putin narratives on the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Some of the main conspiracist post-invasion narratives about Ukraine that have been spread worldwide are also present in our component groups. We can mention, for example, the one related to Zelensky and the traffic of gold, or the narratives related to how Russia's intervention was justified in order to save Ukraine from the so-called neo-Nazis. The most popular narratives include alternative stories about the war, for example, digressing attention from the conflict by comparing the Russian invasion to the situation that involved the UK and the Falkland Islands. The usage of the terms that relate to these narratives significantly increased during the second period, as we can see in the network of term co-occurrences and in the bar graphs of narrative shifts. The last specific cluster study examines the coordinated shared links with the topic of the Russo-Ukrainian conflict shared in Brazilian alt-right, mainly pro-Bolsonaro groups. We analyzed the accumulated groups in an in-depth qualitative analysis. First, by coding the content to the topics, politics, religion, news, or random, and second, by considering the sentiment of the posts, categorizing them in either pro or con with the topics of Russia, Lula, Bolsonaro, and Ukraine. From the 251 posts analyzed, the vast majority did not discuss the Russo-Ukrainian war. Once the topic did appear, it was discussed in one of 3 ways. Neutral religious posts, as shown in picture 1, explicit support of Putin and Russia, especially regarding Putin's actions in support of Brazil, as evident in picture 2, posts that were not explicitly talking about Ukraine or Russia per se, but about how Lula was dealing with the conflict, as displayed in picture 3. Another aspect worth mentioning relates to the misinformation section. Interestingly, the most subscribed to group is currently being paused to avoid being banned by Facebook. This could be proof of fake news and misinformation being spread through these channels. Some limitations in this investigation included the misleading use of hashtags with the motivation of wider exposure. Since the Russia-Ukrainian war has been a trending topic since its inception, users have been adding related hashtags to attract interaction with their posts, whether they are connected to the war or not. For example, some posts used hashtags with the keywords #Ukraine or #Russia without any mention of the topic in the actual Facebook post. This interfered with the CrowdTangle search when categorizing the posts with the most interactions. Ultimately, through the analysis, it was possible to observe a significant divergence from the common Western pro-Ukraine stance. In fact, the main sentiment observed throughout the cluster did not display any particular political support towards Ukraine.